Ever had one of those amazing app ideas pop into your head, but then you think, how does that actually get built? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain. We're going to demystify the entire modern workflow for how an app goes from just a thought to a real working product in your hands.
So, first things first, let's just appreciate the world we're playing in. The mobile market is absolutely massive, and it's basically a two-horse race. You've got Android and you've got iOS, and together they own pretty much everything. Now, this isn't just a fun fact, it's the number one challenge that every single app developer has to solve.
And that leads us right to the million-dollar question. Do you build your app for Android and then start all over again and build a completely separate one for Apple? I mean, that's double the code, double the money, double the headaches. And for years, that's just how it was. But today, the approach is so much smarter.
It all starts right here. And notice, we're not starting with code, we're starting with a plan. The way we build apps now puts all the emphasis on getting this foundation right before a single developer starts typing. This is the architecture phase, and honestly, getting this part right is everything.
You know, what's so wild about the modern process is how it's completely flipped on its head. It is not code first anymore. It all begins with the idea, where we can actually use AI to help figure out what the app should even do. Then comes prototyping, the blueprinting stage, and only after all that's done do we move to actually building, which, as you can see, is now supercharged with AI.
Let's zero in on that prototyping step for a second. Think of a tool like Figma as the architectural software for an app. Every single screen, every button, every little animation is designed and wired together right there in the design tool. This interactive blueprint becomes the one source of truth for the whole team. It's not a sketch anymore, it's a working simulation of the final product. Okay, so the blueprint is done, it's approved, everybody loves it. Now developers have to make their first huge technical decision, and this choice really dictates the tools they'll use to actually build the thing. Are they going to go native for each platform, or use one tool to build for both at the same time? Now, if you're going that cross-platform route, you're pretty much looking at two main contenders. On one side, you've got Flutter from Google. This is for teams that want absolute pixel-perfect control to build these really beautiful custom-designed interfaces. On the other side, you've got React Native from Facebook. This is an incredible choice for companies that already have web developers because it uses the exact same language they already know, JavaScript. All right, to make this all a bit more real and less abstract, we're going to zoom in on Flutter. Let's actually see how you take that design blueprint and start building the visual part of the app, the user interface or the UI, the stuff you're actually going to see and touch. You see, the entire philosophy behind Flutter, it really comes down to this one simple idea, the widget. A widget is just a building block. A piece of text on the screen, that's a widget. A button you can press, also a widget. Even the way you arrange things, like saying, stack these things in a column, well, that's a widget too. You just snap these simple blocks together to build a really complex screen. And these little building blocks come in two main flavors. A stateless widget is basically static. It just shows up and doesn't change. Think of the title of an article. But a stateful widget is dynamic. It can change when you interact with it. A checkbox that you can tick, or a search bar you type into. Those things need to remember their state, so they're stateful. Okay, theory is great, but let's actually see it in action. We're going to build a login screen, something we've all seen a million times, and you'll see how we can build its basic skeleton with just 3 of these simple building blocks. First up, we need a place for the user to type, right? For that, we grab a text field widget. This one little chunk of code, right here, creates that familiar input box for an email address. Next, we obviously need a button to log in. Easy. We just use the elevated button widget. This gives us that clickable button that'll eventually trigger all the login magic. And finally, how do we arrange them? Well, we just take our text field and our button, and we wrap them up inside a column widget. And just like that, boom, it stacks them one on top of the other vertically on the screen. With 3 simple widgets, we've just built the entire visual structure of a login screen. But look, a pretty screen is totally useless if it doesn't actually do anything. So now we need to connect it to the engine. We're leaving the visible front end and we're stepping into the invisible back end, the real engine room that powers the app's logic and handles all its data. You know, modern apps are typically organized in this really clean way called a 3-layer architecture. You've got the presentation layer, that's the UI we just built. Then there's the business layer, which holds all the rules, like, is this password strong enough?
And finally, the data layer, which is responsible for saving and retrieving all the information, like user profiles. For that data layer, developers often use what's called a backend as a service. And the two big players here are Supabase and Firebase. The easiest way to think about it is that Supabase is like a super organized spreadsheet with really strict rules. It's perfect for complex data. Firebase, on the other hand, is more like a flexible folder full of documents, which makes it amazingly fast to get started and scale up. So let's connect all the dots. How do we make our login button actually work? Well, with a service like Firebase, it's almost laughably simple. You import their special authentication tool. Then, when the button gets pressed, you just call one single function. Sign in with email and password. Firebase does all the hard, secure work of checking the password, and if it's correct, you just tell the app, hey, go to the home screen. Done. And that brings us to the final and maybe most important piece of the 2026 puzzle, the one that is changing absolutely everything: artificial intelligence. And this isn't some far-off future concept. This is a tool that's being used by developers right now, every single day. This quote just nails the modern philosophy perfectly. AI isn't replacing the developer, it's becoming their co-pilot. Think about it. Instead of a developer spending an hour trying to figure out the exact code to connect to a database, they can now just ask their AI copilot to generate it in seconds. This frees them up to focus on the much harder, more human problems, like what to actually do with that data to build an amazing experience for the user. And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. In a world where an AI can write and fix a lot of the code for us, what's the skill that really defines a great developer? Maybe it's not about writing flawless code anymore. Maybe it's about architectural vision, creative problem solving, and knowing how to ask the right questions to both your user and to your new AI copilot.